We are now coming up on the next presidential inauguration. And when President Trump takes office again on January 20th, we are going to see a sea change in policies, particularly with respect to the border and illegal immigration. And this is an issue that has been festering in this country for many, many decades. Although the first Trump administration was much more successful than others have been, this is the time to get it right once and for all. And so the state of Florida stands ready, willing, and able to be able to help facilitate these policies that will benefit Floridians and benefit the American people. We've been working with the transition team. I've been speaking with the president. We had the governors down at Mar-a-Lago. There's going to be some ambitious policy changes that are going to be instituted on day one, particularly with respect to illegal immigration and major executive orders that are going to unwind the bad policies of the Biden administration, but then also provide a level of empowerment for states and local governments to help facilitate the policies against illegal immigration. And so the question for the state of Florida is, we're not a sanctuary state. We banned sanctuary cities my first year as governor, but we have a responsibility to be in this fight. State and local officials in Florida must help the Trump administration enforce our nation's immigration laws. And we are going to need, in order to do that effectively, we are going to need legislation to impose additional duties on local officials and provide funding for those local officials. There also needs to be measures to hold people accountable who are violating our anti-sanctuary policies. And then Florida needs to make sure that we don't have any lingering incentives for people to come into our state illegally. So therefore, I'm going to call the legislature into special session starting the week of January 27th. We have the next president taking office January 20th. We anticipate executive orders to be issued immediately after the swearing in and the inaugural address. We're going to have some time to process to make sure we're doing what we need to do, but then we need to act, and we need to act quickly. We don't have time to waste. The American people spoke very clearly of all the issues out there, and there were a lot of very important issues. This issue of the border and illegal immigration was one of the top issues in the 2024 election, and has been one of the top issues that we've had in this country for many, many years. So it will require new legislation in Florida to ensure that the duties of both state and local officials are very clear, and that those duties require them to be assisting the federal government in this regard. Now, the state, we're going to do it because I'm going to order that the state does it. Local, I think you're going to have some different views on that. Now, we're not a sanctuary state. We ban sanctuary cities, but you got to have effective accountability to hold those folks accountable if they choose to go in a different direction. It will also require some funding. Not a lot of funding, but I have a lot of sheriffs out there that are chomping at the bit. They want to be able to help, and they just need a little bit of funding. So we have responsibility to provide that funding, and we're going to be calling upon the legislature to do that. And just think about it. This will help with the overall public safety. Yes, enforcing immigration law in and of itself is important, but if you think back to the hurricanes we just had, they had looters in Pinellas County. I think there was like 45 of them that were arrested over a period of time. And I think 40 of them were in this country illegally. And I'm just thinking to myself, how the hell is this happening here on the head of a natural disaster? You got people that come here without authorization, and they go out and try to loot the place. Give me a break. Those people need to be sent back immediately. So this will end up helping the overall situation, even apart from immigration. Now, the accountability is significant. If those duties are clear in law, I have the authority with respect to certain officials to suspend them from their office if they are neglecting their duties. And that's a authority that I have invoked when it's been appropriate in the past. We also need to make sure that we don't have incentives for people to come illegally. We enacted E-Verify. People said that couldn't happen. We really did probably the strongest legislation in the country in 2023. So I think Florida has really done a great job with one lingering exception. So back in 2014, the legislature enacted and then the then governor signed legislation providing preferential tuition for illegal immigrants, in-state tuition. That is a benefit that you're rewarding somebody for being here illegally. So that in-state tuition, it's been on the books now for over a decade. We've tried to work with the legislature to get that repealed in the past. It's something that always seems to fall out of the bill as it gets. No more excuses on this. We need to remove all incentives to come to the state of Florida illegally, and that is one of them. So we have a responsibility to act, and we will. Now, the call that we will make will not be limited to illegal immigration. There are other pressing issues that the state of Florida is facing. I know we have a legislative session coming up in a couple months, but I don't think some of these can wait. So we will also be including in this call lingering hurricane relief. We had 2 major hurricanes hit this state within the last couple months. And there are issues with respect to agriculture relief. There are issues with respect to homeowners, things like My Safe Florida Home. We have people that are approved, they're on a waiting list, but the funding ran out. Well, why not provide them that grant so they can build back in a way that's going to be more resilient in the future, given that they're in those areas. So we're putting that in the call. And look, if you're not going to do any more relief, if the legislature doesn't want to do that, that's one thing. But if you're going to do it, why wait for the money to be available July 1st? Why not just get it out the door this month so that people can get the relief they need? We'll also be including a call in the call condominium relief. So there was a major issue in this state because of the tragedy of Surfside back in 2021. One of the worst moments in the state's history. We lost close to 100 people, devastated the community of Surfside and South Florida, and people wanted to do something, and I respect that. And we've had, even apart from Surfside, there were decades in Florida where these condos have been neglectful. There's no question about that. But one piece of legislation was just not going to be able to solve all the problems. We're now seeing some problems that I think were unintended that have popped up. And we have a responsibility to act to make sure that people can stay in their condo units. The legislature should not be doing anything that's going to cause someone to have to flee because of an artificial mandate. And so I think it was a good faith effort. I don't think people had all the answers then, but now we've seen what's happened. My administration, we've been working over the last several months soliciting input. We've held roundtables in different parts of the state. I know the Florida Senate has been soliciting input. So let's get our heads together and let's provide some relief. And then the final addition to the call will be reforming the petition and amendment process in the state of Florida. I mean, this was a major thing in this last election, and to have the amount of fraudulent petitions that were verified as fraudulent by the Secretary of State's investigation for Amendment 4, that is a huge problem. And I think part of the reason we're at this juncture is because the citizen initiative has really been transformed into a special interest initiative. And it's basically major, well-funded interest. They will pay people to gather petitions, and they'll pay them. And so these people have admitted, some of them have admitted to doing fraudulent petitions. And so that we need election integrity across the board. It can't just be, yes, obviously, if you're going to cast your ballot, you need ID, you need paper ballots, all that. But these initiatives, these petitions, should not be able to be manipulated this way, especially with respect to amending the Constitution. Our Constitution should not be for sale to the highest bidder. So the reform is needed. I think there's broad agreement in the legislature that reform is needed. I think it's timely, because why start another election cycle where you have the old system? And then what? If there's fraud, what are you going to do at that point? It's just it didn't work this last time to adequately police the fraud. We got it, and I think people will be held accountable. I know some have been. I think there'll probably be more prosecutions. But let's just get it right now, so we don't have to worry about this going forward. So I look forward to being able to work with the legislature to deliver these really significant issues on behalf of the people of Florida. But we don't have the ability to just sit around and wait with a new president taking office, with these new policy changes that are coming. We've got to get ahead of it. We've got to make sure that we're there as a willing partner with the Trump administration to be able to accomplish what the voters sent President Trump to accomplish.